Wake up, Pookies! It's August 15th! Hi, everyone! So, I know it is no longer August 15th because I love to push off making videos. It is August 15th in our hearts because we are trapped in the days, you know? Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about at all, very crazy of you to click on this video. Hi, welcome. Anyways, August 15th and the days are both references to the series or the project called k-ka-kagerou Project. The Kagepro project, or also called kagepro, is a mixed media series created by Jin. It originally started as a series of Vocaloid songs. Jin was a musician whose career wasn't really taking off in the way that he wanted, so he went over to Nico Nico and decided to try the whole Vocaloid thing out. His first song was Jinzo Enemy, or Artificial Enemy, and it was released in 2011. It did pretty well, but it didn't reach viral status or anything. Also, it may be redundant to point out, but at this point, no one really knew that this song was going to be part of a series. The original singer was Miku, and if you look at the art of the video, it also looks a lot like Miku, so many people just thought the song was like a more general Hatsune Miku song. Jin continued to release Vocaloid songs. The next song was Mekakushi Code, or Blindfold Code, which introduced and focused on a different character, this time Kido, and gave some more vague lore, even though at the time we didn't really know it was lore. Now, the third song was Kagero Days, and man, did this song pop off. Even if you aren't into Kagepro, there's a good chance that you either recognize the song or at least the visuals. It's also the song that gave Kagepro Project its name. Not only is the song really good and catchy, it's also really surprising, shocking. I almost want to say the word graphic, but I feel like that gives off the wrong connotation. So let's just say it really has the shock factor. The next song after that was Headphone Actor, and I promise I am not planning to go through every single song, since that's not what this video is about. However, I do want to mention this song because this is when things start to connect. Near the end of Headphone Actor, it is revealed that the girl singing in Headphone Actor is the same girl from Jinzo Enemy. People started to see that all these songs are somehow interconnected, and that is the important part, my friends. So as songs continue to release, Jin introduced many other characters and weaved things together. We started to see how everyone and everything were connected, though don't get me wrong, it was still pretty confusing and pretty vague. But soon we had our cast of characters and a pretty loose understanding of the lore and the story. Now, what is the story? That can be a very hard question to answer. Honestly, even thinking about how I would come up with a succinct summary of the plot is very difficult. And why, you may ask? Because it's a time loop, baby. Yes, the reason I can't really easily summarize the plot is because there's just so much plot. Do you remember how I mentioned that this is a multimedia project? Each medium is a different timeline route. This means that the manga is different from the anime, which is different than the light novels, which is different from the short film. The music is also a different route, but the music contains two routes, both Route 1 and Route XX. There's also a few songs that are just kind of tied to other routes, or maybe is a more general song, but I'm not gonna get too into it. Just know that there's a lot of things that happen. So yeah, it's a bit complicated to say the least. Just for reference, the YouTuber Breadbox made a video called The Kagero Project, The Complete Story, and it's over an hour long. It is like the most concise way to put the storyline, and it's still an hour long.
Here is my very, and I do mean very, short summary I will give about Kagepro. There is a group of kids. They all go through respective traumatic events, die, come back with special eye abilities. They all meet each other and find comfort in one another. There's also some more sinister things going on, obviously. So they team up and try to defeat it. In each instance where they fail and die, one of the characters, Mary, resets the world. And, well, they start a new route.
Again, this is so very brief. What I do want to talk about are the overall themes of Kagepro. While I do admit that the actual plot can sound a bit overwhelming, ultimately, the story is about these kids who feel lonely and different. They find each other and they form a found family. The time loop represents being unable to let go or move on. They're stuck. literally. I kind of take it as all of these characters are stuck in this cycle and they finally learn to let go and move forward with their lives, with forming friendships and connections as the way to do that. Oh, and since I realized I never explicitly addressed the significance of the days and August 15th, basically, the days is this weird, almost limbo state between life and death, and anyone who dies on August 15th enters the days. So ultimately, they're trying to find a way for people to move on and escape from it. I personally got into the Kagepro project, I want to say around 2014. At this point, I was already somewhat into Vocaloid when I stumbled upon Jubiphonic's cover of Tome Answer. As a depressed 12-year-old, I cannot begin to even describe the emo ways in which I loved this song. I highly recommend listening to it if you haven't already, both the original and Juby's cover of it. I then went on to listen to the other works in this project, and I was hooked. I watched the anime, I've skimmed the manga, but for me, my primary interaction is with the music itself. These are songs that I still listen to regularly, and they still manage to get me in my feels. Despite my deep love for Kagepro project, this was somehow the first year I had ever heard about dazecon. dazecon was an online fan convention all about Kagepro. Apparently, it first started in 2020, and this year, 2025, was their 5th and final dazecon. I actually only heard about it because I opened up YouTube and saw that Jubyphonic had a live stream scheduled that mentioned dazecon in the title. So I immediately searched it because I am a Kagepro project lover, and I found information about the convention. As I mentioned, it was completely online and it was also free. I was super excited I was able to attend, but I was also really stressed because when I found out, it was literally that day. Luckily, when I found out about it, it was still pretty early in the morning, so I did have time to get ready. I was able to shower and eat some breakfast. I also had time to familiarize myself with the convention. So the main hub of the convention was a Discord server. It basically was the primary operating system that the whole convention took place on. There was a schedule for various streams people could attend as panels. Some panels were streamed on the Discord, while others were on their various YouTube or Twitch streams. There was also an artist alley where each featured artist had their own channel or booth where they were able to have links to their shop and display some of their works. There was even its own dazecon ball pit. It had it all. Though I did spend a few minutes just clicking through everything, it was pretty easy to pick up, but I was really glad that I had those extra few minutes to familiarize myself with it, or I would have been very confused. I also took a look at the schedule to get an idea of what panels I wanted to go to. I found that typically at each hour slot, there was either a panel that was a bit more passive, like you could just kind of sit and stream it, and there were also more interactive panels, like a murder mystery, for example. I personally chose mostly passive panels because one, I love me some video essays and a deep dive. I love just listening to people rant. Number two, I am actually pretty shy when it comes to interacting with big online chat rooms. I love one-on-one yapping, but something about a fast-moving chat makes me so nervous. I also spent this extra time in the beginning to browse the artist alley. There were so many talented artists, I really had to hold myself back. In the end, I did spend around $30 and mainly bought stickers. I wanted to support artists while also getting a couple of physical memories of the event. I will say that the one negative to an online artist alley is shipping costs. It really sucks when shipping is an additional $5 to $10. Again, I understand that it exists, but it still sucks nonetheless. Also, I do feel bad about my money not always going directly to the artist. Some of the artist's shop links were Etsy sites, and I know that Etsy takes a percentage of the deal, so I wish I could have given the artist $5 and they take the full $5. Also, I want to mention that a lot of the physical merch was selling out so fast. So on to the convention itself. Finally, it was 11:30 and I went to the YouTube live stream of the opening ceremonies. It is here where I learned that this year was in fact the last year. It was also really helpful. It went over some things that I should expect, as well as giving me more information about some of the panels and Discord servers. The first panel I went to was called Kage Fandom, a retrospective look, and it was hosted by Ninth Feather and the Fab Hawk on Twitch. It was a really nice panel. It was very nostalgic and just talked about the project from a more fandom perspective, as the title may suggest. The one thing that I didn't like about Twitch is the ads. There were a few times where we all had to sit through like 2 minutes of unskippable ads, but luckily the panelists would sit through and wait until we were all back to continue. Nothing against the panelists, like they couldn't control it, but that is one thing that I noticed was a reoccurring thing, was ads. Luckily, the next hour didn't have any panels I personally really wanted to attend, so I took a lunch break. I also popped over into a streaming room where an artist named Ota was playing piano covers of various Vocaloid songs, including a lot from Kagepro. They were not only really good, but they were also really funny. It was a really chill way to have downtime, but also still feel like I'm celebrating August 15th. It finally hit 2 p.m. for me, which was when the iconic Jubiphonic panel was held. This was a YouTube live stream where she just talked about her experience with Kagepro project and answered some questions. It was really fun and really interesting just on like a semi-parasocial level. As I mentioned before, Jubiphonic's covers were what got me into the series in the first place, and her videos were my go-to English covers for a lot of the songs. Also, judging from the chat, I think that this was the case for many people. Now, I did have to leave her panel early because I really wanted to attend another panel. This panel was by J.D. Double Dubs called Optimism versus Hopelessness, What Kagepro Meant to Me. Now, just from the title alone, I knew I was going to love this panel. I honestly love just watching people ramble on about their interests, especially ones that are very deep and personal. I truly teared up while watching this, and I honestly think that this was my personal favorite panel from the whole convention. Like, it really stuck with me. It was also really funny. So like, it was emotional and funny. Like, what more can you ask for? There was also a moment that I found genuinely so hilarious. So they were saying a little something about every character, and when they got to Shintaro, they said, and I quote, "I originally hated Shintaro. I thought he was so lame, but then I thought about all he had been through and how all his friends died on the same day." I don't know what this says about me, but I found that the funniest thing ever. After that panel, I went to a panel called Kagepro Into the Merchverse, a deep dive into Kagero project merchandise, and it was by Ibo7M3. The panel started out with a Kahoot session in which I did pretty badly, but I at least managed to make it into the top 5. It was then a presentation about the various and niche Kagepro merch that had officially been made, which, spoiler alert, is a lot. It then also went into some practical advice and information about how to go about adding to your own merch collection, which I personally don't consider myself too much of a collector, but it was interesting nonetheless. By the time I was done with this panel, I was getting pretty tired. I know it sounds a little silly since I literally was just sitting at my computer all day, but it really does drain you. Luckily, from here on out, a lot of what I had planned were less involved and required a little less sustained focus. There was a CMV premiere that I just had to watch. In case you didn't know, I used to sustain myself off of CMVs when I was younger. Me and my friend even used to make CMVs ourselves. Like, I will always support a CMV. The CMV was only a few minutes long, so after that, I mainly sat on the Otochord channel and listened to live piano covers. I decided to have dinner and to try to get other things done while I chilled on my computer. Honestly, it was pretty nice having an online convention because I was able to feel at least semi-productive. However, because I was trying to pay attention and be involved as much as I can, I didn't really do anything that took too much concentration. I was able to do little fun things such as make some keychains and lay out some CD covers to print. Don't ask. I also want to take time to mention that all throughout the convention, there was a favorite character poll happening in the Discord. At first, I didn't really think too much of it. I kind of was like,
What's the point? We all know Ayano was just going to win.
but it was really nice. There was a bracket, and every hour a new poll would drop. I found myself really looking forward to the next poll. Like, I was constantly waiting for it, guys. It was just a nice, organized way for participation because sometimes whenever you're sitting there and kind of just listening to things, you don't really feel too involved. So this was just kind of a way for me to like continuously feel at least like a little involved. I will say that INO still won in the end, so that's no surprise. Though I was sad when NA lost to INO earlier in the bracket. That one really hit. I continued to chill and enjoy my downtime until 8 p.m. when the Days Reanimate watch party started. Days Reanimate is a reanimate project where a bunch of animators came together to reanimate Kagepro project music videos. Reanimate projects in general aren't a new thing, nor is it something that is only special to Kagepro project, so it basically is exactly what it sounds like. Days Reanimate had done projects in previous years for dazecon, so we started with watching all of the previous videos together, and then we got to watch the premiere of the newest and final project. It was just so beautiful because it truly showed how many people that Kagepro had touched and inspired. Also, animation takes like so much work, so it was just enormous like kudos to everyone. The last half of the panel was a Q&A, which was actually super informative and interesting. The panelists were all like professionals in the field or at least related fields. So even though I didn't have any want to be an animator myself, it was really interesting to learn more about the actual business of it all. So yeah, it was kind of a fun like peek behind the curtain. At 9 p.m. was a panel called Time Loops as a Trope in Kagepro and Other Media and was hosted by Kalachi. As a person who is very captivated by time loop media, this was also a really fun panel. A quote that I actually wrote down from this panel is, "Characters cannot move forward because they emotionally cannot move forward." I can't say it better myself. Finally, at 10 p.m., all that was really left was the dazecon listening party. However, unfortunately for me, this is when my Wi-Fi finally decided to crash out. I tried to reconnect so many times, but it was just not happening. As much as I wanted to lay in bed and listen to Kagero songs with everyone, I sadly could not. Don't worry, I did eventually get my fix in. It wasn't until the next day where I listened to the Kagero project playlist that they had linked, but it was just kind of nice to decompress after such a long day. So, yeah. So I went to bed, and since we are not stuck in a time loop, I woke up on August 16th. As they say, tomorrow's another day. I just wanted to make this video because I feel so grateful that I got to experience dazecon 2025. It was so amazing to not only rekindle a hyperfixation from when I was 12, but to also connect with others who love it just as much as I do. Also, it was amazing just to see that like the fandom was so alive. As a self-proclaimed fangirl, what I love so much about fandom is the feeling you get when you make these connections with people through the media. And my experience with dazecon just kind of embodied that. I won't lie, it had been a while since I experienced a convention like this. Not to sound like a boomer or anything, but when I go to conventions anymore, I started to realize that I'm not into many of the big modern fandoms. I know that this is mainly a skill issue on my part, so maybe this is just me realizing that I need to start going to like more niche conventions or something, but I don't know. I also thought this was awesome because of how accessible it was. This was free and online. It was even translated into Spanish. I will mention that depending on what time zone you're in, participating with everything live could be difficult. Even then, at least all of the panels are archived either on dazecon's YouTube channel or the panelists' YouTube channel. It's also all archived on their website as well. Anyways, I mainly wanted to make this video to capture this beautiful experience and also be able to talk about my love for the Kagero project here on this channel. As for my final statement, my closing remarks, I think my final message in the guest book says it all. I can't believe this is somehow my first dazecon, and it's so bittersweet I made the last one. I remember almost a decade ago, I stumbled upon Jubiphonics' Tome Answer and it was all over for me. I downloaded it and listened to it pretty much every day. I was going through a really rough time and I truly couldn't relate to anything more. Every time I even hear the melody, I feel like I'm taken back to when I was like 12. Of course, my love for the project continued to grow and grow. I remember watching the anime live as it was being released, and I would write different fan-translated lyrics in my journal like the emo tween I was. Though I haven't been too active in the fandom in a while, I still regularly go back and listen to the music and always smile when it's August 15th. I recently forced some of my friends to listen to every song with me in release order while I explained each song's significance. I think all of us could relate in the idea of feeling out of place or different, and we all crave to have friends. Kagepro reminded us that there's always hope. It's truly amazing that the fandom is still going strong and we'll keep living August 15th again and again in our hearts. Big shout out to everyone who made dazecon happen. Thank you to all the people who organized this, the panelists, the artists. Thank you for letting me experience this all with you. Please look over all of the grammar and spelling mistakes that don't really make sense. I was doing the best I can. But yeah, thank you all for watching this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and maybe check out some of my other videos. So yeah, anyways, see you next time, or maybe not. Bye.